Welcome to Certified Data Engineer Associate DEA-C01 Practice Exam number 16. You'll get 30 exam-style questions. I will read each question, then give you a 10-second countdown to review the answer choices on screen. Feel free to pause the video if you need longer. After each countdown, I will reveal the correct answer and explanation. Question 1. A Datum Insurance has a DynamoDB table that stores policy records. The application team needs to capture all item-level changes, including both the previous and updated versions of each modified item, and deliver these changes to an Amazon S3 data lake for historical analysis with a retention requirement of 90 days. Which approach meets these requirements with the least operational overhead? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Kinesis data streams for DynamoDB captures item-level changes with configurable retention up to 365 days, meeting the 90-day requirement, and integrates directly with Amazon Data Firehose for fully managed delivery to S3 without custom code. DynamoDB Streams has a fixed 24-hour retention period, which is insufficient for the 90-day requirement, and both the Lambda and KCL approaches require custom code to write to S3. DynamoDB Streams also limits concurrent readers to 2 per shard before throttling occurs. DynamoDB Export to S3 provides point-in-time snapshots rather than real-time change capture, missing individual item-level modifications between export intervals. Question 2. Tailspin Corp stores 500 TB of historical log data in Amazon S3 in CSV format. Data analysts use Amazon Athena to query this data, but query costs have become excessive at approximately $2,500 per TB scanned. The team wants to reduce Athena costs by at least 90% while maintaining query performance. The data is partitioned by date, but analysts frequently query across all dates, filtering on specific application ID and error code columns. Which combination of actions should the team take? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option E. Converting CSV to Parquet with snappy compression can reduce data size by 75–95% through columnar storage and compression, directly reducing Athena scan costs proportionally. Adding partitions on application ID allows Athena to skip irrelevant partitions entirely when analysts filter by application, and bucketing on error code within Parquet files further reduces the data scanned for error code filters. Together, these optimizations can achieve 90% plus cost reduction. S3 intelligent tiering reduces storage costs, not Athena query scan costs, which are based on data scanned rather than storage class. Migrating to Redshift serverless would change the billing model, but introduces a different cost structure and does not directly address the Athena optimization requirement. Partition projection improves query planning speed for date partitions, but does not reduce the amount of data scanned when analysts query across all dates. Question 3. A company needs to access and integrate third-party datasets hosted in Amazon S3 buckets by business partners into its existing data pipeline. Which method meets this requirement with the least operational overhead? Select 1 answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. AWS Data Exchange is a marketplace specifically designed for finding, subscribing to, and using third-party datasets in AWS. Once subscribed, datasets can be accessed directly using the Data Exchange API without building custom ingestion infrastructure. Data providers handle their own delivery and entitlement management, minimizing the subscriber's operational burden. AWS glue crawling requires the datasets to already be accessible in an S3 location with appropriate permissions and focuses on metadata cataloging rather than third-party data access. Amazon Kinesis is optimized for real-time streaming data ingestion, not for accessing static third-party datasets from S3. AWS DataSync automates file transfers between storage systems, but does not provide a marketplace or subscription model for discovering and accessing third-party datasets. Question 4. A data engineer at Northwind Media needs to monitor data quality for a daily Glue ETL pipeline that loads customer data into a curated S3 data lake zone. The pipeline must automatically stop loading if more than 5% of records have null email addresses or if any duplicate customer IDs are detected. Which approach should the data engineer use? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. The Evaluate Data Quality transform integrates directly into Glue ETL jobs and uses data quality definition language (DQDL) rules. Rules like completeness for the email column can check that at least 95% of values are non-null, and uniqueness on customer ID ensures no duplicates exist. The transform can be configured with a failure action that stops the job when rule violations are detected, preventing bad data from being loaded into the curated zone. Running a separate Databrew profile job after the ETL job means bad data would already be loaded before quality issues are detected. Amazon Macy is designed for discovering sensitive data like PII in S3, not for general data quality validation. While a custom PySpark script could work, it requires writing and maintaining custom code, when the built-in Evaluate Data Quality transform provides the same capability with less effort. Question 5. A company uses Amazon Athena for one-time queries against S3 data. Multiple users, teams, and applications share the same AWS account and must have separate query processes, isolated access to query history, and distinct permission controls. Which solution meets these requirements? Select 1 answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Amazon Athena workgroups isolate query execution environments within the same AWS account. Each workgroup maintains its own query history, result location, data usage controls, and permission boundary. By creating a workgroup per use case and using IAM policies with resource-level tags to restrict which principals can access each workgroup, the company achieves complete separation of query processes and history across users, teams, and applications without creating separate AWS accounts or duplicating data. Creating separate S3 buckets with bucket policies controls access to the underlying data storage, but does not isolate Athena query history or processes between different users running queries against the same tables. Creating IAM roles per use case can restrict which AWS actions a principal can perform, but does not natively enforce workgroup isolation in Athena. Roles alone do not separate query history or limit query execution to specific workgroups without additional workgroup configuration. Glue Data Catalog resource policies control access to catalog metadata such as tables and databases, but do not affect Athena workgroup isolation or query history separation. Question 6. A retail company needs to validate that a Redshift table's stock quantity column always contains positive integers and that the product category column never contains null or empty values. Which approach implements these data quality checks with minimal operational effort? Select 1 answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. AWS Glue Databrew rule sets allow defining named data quality rules targeting specific columns with conditions such as value range checks, null checks, and pattern validations. A profile job then evaluates the dataset against the rule set and presents results on a visual dashboard showing compliance rates for each rule. This requires no code and directly maps to both requirements. A range rule for positive integers on stock quantity, and a completeness rule for non-null, non-empty values on product category. AWS Glue ETL jobs can enforce constraints through custom Spark or Python scripts, but require writing, testing, and maintaining code for what Databrew handles declaratively. Data brew recipes define transformation steps for cleaning and normalizing data, rather than defining testable quality rules. Recipes transform data, but do not generate compliance reports against specific business rules. Lambda functions can validate data on updates, but require custom development for both the validation logic and the reporting mechanism, adding significantly more operational overhead than data brew rule sets. Question 7. Contoso Pharmaceuticals has a data lake on Amazon S3 with 500 tables cataloged in the AWS Glue Data Catalog. The data engineering team needs to detect when new partitions are added to tables to ensure Athena queries return the most current data with the lowest latency for partition detection. Which approach should the data engineer implement? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Registering partitions directly through the Glue Data Catalog Partition API from the ETL pipeline producer-side registration provides the lowest latency for partition visibility. The partition becomes queryable in Athena immediately after the API call completes, with no polling delay or event processing overhead. Scheduling crawlers every 15 minutes introduces up to 15 minutes of latency and incurs crawler costs for 500 tables. Crawl event mode uses S3 events to trigger crawlers, but still incurs crawler execution overhead and latency. S3 event notifications triggering MSCK repair table in Athena is inefficient because it rescans all partitions and requires maintaining Lambda functions, adding operational complexity and latency compared to direct API registration. Question 8. Tailspin Enterprises runs an ETL pipeline using AWS Glue. The Glue job reads data from an Amazon RDS PostgreSQL database and writes transformed data to Amazon S3. The Glue job runs in a VPC to access the RDS instance. Recently, the job started failing with errors indicating it cannot reach Amazon S3. The data engineer confirms that the RDS connectivity still works. Which combination of actions should the data engineer take to resolve the S3 connectivity issue? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option B and option E. When an AWS Glue job runs within a VPC, it requires an S3 VPC gateway endpoint with proper root table entries to access S3. The gateway endpoint is added to the root table of the subnet where the Glue job runs, providing a private path to S3 without traversing the internet. Additionally, Glue jobs in a VPC require a self-referencing security group rule that allows all TCP inbound traffic from itself, which enables communication between Glue workers. A NAT gateway would work, but is unnecessary and adds cost when a free S3 gateway endpoint is available. Updating the security group for outbound HTTPS to S3 IP ranges is not the root cause, since security groups are stateful and allow outbound by default. Modifying the S3 bucket policy is not required for VPC-based Glue access, since the issue is network connectivity, not IAM permissions. Question 9. A data engineer is building a pipeline where a Glue job transforms MySQL data and loads it to S3, followed by 3 Lambda functions processing the data in parallel. Which solution orchestrates this workflow with the least operational overhead? Select 1 answer. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. OSSTEP Functions natively integrates with both AWS Glue and Lambda through SDK service integrations. A task state runs the Glue job and waits for completion, then a parallel state simultaneously invokes all 3 Lambda functions without requiring custom coordination code. Step Functions provides built-in error handling, retry policies, and a visual execution history for monitoring, all without managing infrastructure. Glue workflows are designed to orchestrate sequences of Glue jobs and crawlers and do not support invoking Lambda functions as first-class workflow steps. This integration would require workarounds such as a Glue job that calls Lambda externally. A Apache Airflow on EKS achieves the workflow goal, but requires provisioning and managing a Kubernetes cluster and Airflow deployment, which introduces infrastructure and operational overhead that step functions eliminates entirely. Apache Airflow on EC01 shares the same management burden and additionally inverts the workflow order, starting with Lambda before the glue transformation has produced the data that Lambda is supposed to process. Question 10. Northwind Analytics has an AWS Glue ETL job that reads new order records from an Amazon RDS PostgreSQL database using a JDBC connection. The job has bookmarks enabled at the job level. A data engineer notices that every time the job runs, it reprocesses all records from the source table instead of only processing new records. The engineer confirms that the source table has a sequentially increasing order id column and that job.init and job.commit are both called correctly in the script. The engineer also verifies that only one instance of the job runs at a time, which change will most likely resolve the reprocessing issue. Select 1, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. AWS Glue uses the transformation CTX parameter as the indexing key to locate and persist bookmark state for each specific source in the ETL script. If transformation CTX is not passed to the method that reads the data, job bookmarks are effectively disabled for that dynamic frame, even when bookmarks are enabled at the job level. Without transformation CTX, the job has no way to store or retrieve the bookmark position between runs, causing it to read all records every time. Adding job bookmark keys would help specify which column to track, but does not solve the fundamental issue of missing transformation CTX, since without it the bookmark mechanism is not activated for the source at all. Converting to a Spark data frame would actually make the problem worse because AWS Glue job bookmarks are not supported with Spark data frames, only with dynamic frames. Resetting the bookmark state clears any existing bookmark data, but does not address the root cause of why bookmarks are not functioning, and the job would continue to reprocess all data on subsequent runs. Question 11. A data engineering team at Litware Corp uses Amazon DynamoDB to store real-time user session data. They need to stream all table changes to an S3 data lake for historical analytics. The solution must support retention beyond 24 hours, allow multiple consumers to read the change stream simultaneously, and integrate with Amazon Data Firehose for delivery to S3. Which architecture should the team implement? Select 1, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Kinesis data streams for DynamoDB provides a superior CDC mechanism compared to native DynamoDB streams when the requirements include retention beyond 24 hours, up to 365 days, multiple simultaneous consumers via enhanced fanout, and native integration with Amazon Data Firehose. DynamoDB Streams has a maximum retention of 24 hours and limits concurrent readers to 2 per shard, which fails both the retention and multiple consumer requirements. Amazon Data Firehose cannot read directly from DynamoDB Streams as a source. It requires Kinesis data streams or direct PUT as sources. DynamoDB export to S3 is a batch operation that exports full or incremental snapshots using PITR, but does not provide real-time streaming of individual changes. Question 12. A data engineer at Contoso Research needs to configure Amazon S3 encryption for a cross-account data sharing scenario. The data lake in account A must share encrypted objects with an analytics team in account B. The objects are currently encrypted with the default SSCS3 encryption. Account B users report they cannot decrypt the shared objects. What should the data engineer do to enable cross-account access to the encrypted data? Select 1, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. SSE S3 uses an AWS managed key, AWS/S3, that cannot be shared across accounts. To enable cross-account access to encrypted objects, the data engineer must re-encrypt the objects using SSE KMS with a customer-managed KMS key, then update the KMS key policy to grant account B permissions to use the key for decryption. Customer-managed keys support cross-account access through key policies. SSCC requires the consumer to provide the encryption key with every request, which is operationally impractical and insecure for cross-account sharing at scale. There is no S3 decrypt permission. Decryption for SSE S3 objects is handled transparently by AWS using the managed key, and the issue is that account B cannot use account A's managed encryption key. DSSC KMS does not automatically support cross-account access. It still requires a customer-managed KMS key with cross-account permissions in the key policy, similar to standard SSE KMS. Question 13. Adatum Healthcare uses Amazon Athena to query a large dataset stored in CSV format in Amazon S3. The dataset contains 500 GB of patient visit records. Athena queries are slow and expensive. The data engineer wants to optimize both query performance and cost. Which two actions should the data engineer take? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option C. Converting CSV to Parquet provides the greatest cost and performance improvement because Parquet is a columnar format that enables Athena to read only the columns needed for a query, reducing data scanned by up to 95% compared to CSV. Athena charges $5 per TB scanned, so this directly reduces cost. Partitioning by frequently filtered columns like visit year and visit month enables Athena to skip entire partitions of data that do not match the query filter, further reducing scanned data. S3 transfer acceleration improves upload speed to S3, but has no effect on Athena query performance or cost. S3 versioning provides object version management and does not improve read performance or reduce query costs. gzip compression reduces storage cost and data scan somewhat, but Parquet conversion is far more effective because it provides both compression and columnar storage benefits. Question 14. A data engineer at Litware Commerce is using Amazon Data Firehose to deliver clickstream data from a website to Amazon S3. The data arrives as JSON and must be stored in Apache Parquet format with dynamic partitioning based on the user's country extracted from each record. The engineer notices that the buffer size is automatically set to 64 MB and cannot be reduced. What explains this behavior, and what is the minimum buffering interval the engineer can configure? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. When both Parquet/ORC format conversion and dynamic partitioning are enabled on a Firehose delivery stream, the buffer size range is restricted to 64-128 MB, and the minimum buffering interval for dynamic partitioning is 60 seconds. These constraints exist because format conversion requires sufficient data to create efficient Parquet files, and dynamic partitioning needs to accumulate records for proper partition key extraction and routing. The 64 MB minimum is specifically enforced when format conversion is enabled, not for all delivery streams. Standard S3 delivery streams support buffer sizes as low as 1 MB. 0-second buffering is only available for S3 destinations without dynamic partitioning enabled. The default buffer size for standard Firehose streams is configurable between 1-128 MB, not fixed at 64 MB. Question 15. Fabricam Retail runs a multi-account data lake using AWS Lake Formation. The data governance team needs to manage access for 200+ tables across 15 departments. Currently, granting named resource permissions for each table to each department is creating significant administrative overhead. Which approach should the data engineer recommend to simplify permission management? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. LF-tag-based access control is the recommended approach for managing permissions at scale in lake formation. By assigning LF tags such as department equals sales or classification equals restricted to tables and columns, permissions can be granted using tag expressions rather than individual resource grants. This decouples policy creation from resource creation, meaning new tables automatically inherit permissions based on their tags. LF tags also support hierarchical inheritance, where database tags propagate to tables and columns. IAM policies with explicit ARNs require updating every time a new table is created. S3 bucket policies operate at the storage layer and do not integrate with lake formation's fine-grained access model. Separate databases per department create data silos and make cross-department data sharing difficult. Question 16. Adatum Analytics has an Amazon OpenSearch service domain that stores application logs. The domain currently has 30 TB of hot data, but only the last 7 days of logs are actively searched. Logs older than 7 days are rarely queried, but must be retained for 90 days for compliance. Logs older than 90 days must be archived at the lowest cost. The team needs to reduce storage costs significantly. Which approach should the data engineer implement? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. An index state management (ISM) policy in OpenSearch automates the lifecycle of indices across storage tiers. UltraWarm provides cost-effective, S3-backed read-only storage for infrequently accessed indices, significantly reducing costs compared to hot storage while still allowing queries. Cold storage offers even lower costs for rarely accessed data that must be retained for compliance. Deleting indices after 7 days and archiving to Glacier would make the data inaccessible for the compliance-required 90-day query window. Adding more hot data nodes increases rather than reduces costs. Cross-cluster replication is designed for high availability, not cost optimization of aging data. Question 17. A retail company uses a Redshift cluster with daily sales table updates. The team wants to automatically check whether tables have been updated each day and record the status in an Amazon DynamoDB table. Which 2 steps meet this requirement? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option D. A Lambda function using the Redshift Data API can query table status information programmatically without managing persistent database connections, then write the results directly to DynamoDB in a serverless, low-overhead manner. EventBridge schedules the Lambda function at a consistent daily time, providing reliable automation without running any infrastructure. eSitwo with a cron job requires provisioning, patching, and maintaining a server just to run a simple scheduled task, adding unnecessary operational burden. VPC peering enables network communication between services, but does not provide any data synchronization logic or automated status checking. There is no native Redshift to DynamoDB synchronization feature built into either service. Question 18. Contoso Media is building a real-time analytics pipeline. Clickstream events from their website are ingested into Amazon Kinesis data streams with 20 shards. The data must be loaded into Amazon Redshift serverless for near real-time dashboards. The data engineer wants to eliminate S3 staging to reduce latency. Which approach should the data engineer use to achieve the lowest ingestion latency into Redshift? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Redshift streaming ingestion allows creating a materialized view that reads directly from Kinesis data streams or Amazon MSK without any intermediate S3 staging. This provides the lowest latency path from the stream to Redshift as data lands in the materialized view during refresh operations. Amazon Data Firehose with Redshift, as the destination still stages data through S3 before issuing a copy command, adding latency. Using Lambda to execute individual insert statements via the data API is inefficient for high-throughput clickstream data and does not scale well. Apache Flink with a JDBC sync requires managing connections and has higher operational overhead compared to native streaming ingestion. Question 19. A data engineer at Fabricam Analytics is configuring an Amazon MSK cluster for a financial transaction processing system. The system requires that no messages are lost, even during broker failures. The cluster has 3 brokers, which combination of Apache Kafka configuration settings should the data engineer apply? Select one, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Setting replication factor equals 3 ensures each partition has 3 replicas across all brokers. Combined with min.insync replicas equals 2, at least 2 replicas must acknowledge a write before the producer receives confirmation. With AX equals all, the producer waits for all in-sync replicas to acknowledge the write. This configuration tolerates the loss of one broker while maintaining data durability and availability. Setting replication factor equals 2 with min.insync replicas equals 1 provides less durability since only one replica must acknowledge writes, allowing data loss if that single replica fails. Setting min.insync replicas equals 3 equal to the replication factor means the cluster cannot accept writes if any single broker is unavailable, which reduces availability unnecessarily. A replication factor of 1 provides no redundancy, meaning any single broker failure results in data loss. Question 20. A data engineer has noticed that daily AWS Glue Spark jobs processing mobile app log data are running slowly. Investigation shows the log data is stored in S3 without partitioning, causing full dataset scans. Which 2 actions improve performance? Select 2, review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option D. Partitioning the S3 data by date allows Glue to use partition pruning, reading only the subset of files relevant to each job run instead of scanning the entire dataset. This directly reduces the volume of data processed and the job duration. Upgrading to a larger worker type provides more CPU and memory per node, addressing bottlenecks when the cluster is resource-constrained for daily production ETL. S3 Express One Zone improves latency for storage access, but does not resolve the root cause of scanning too much data. Dynamic frames benefit semi-structured or schema-evolving data, but offer limited gains when the data is already well-structured. Flex Execution class uses spare compute capacity with variable start times, which is cost-saving for non-urgent workloads but not appropriate for daily scheduled production jobs. That is the end of practice exam number 16. Review the questions you missed, then come back for the next batch.